Commander Zephic's forearms trembled as he watched the tactical display aboard the orbital defense station. The Kresh Armada stretched across space like a plague of metallic locusts, 300 ships of varying sizes, all bearing down on the peaceful mining colony of Zirian Prime. His people, the Althari, had never seen such overwhelming force directed at their small outpost. How long until they reached firing range? Zephic asked, his voice crackling through the communication system. 18 minutes, Commander, replied Lieutenant Vex from the sensor station. Their dreadnoughts are leading the formation. We count at least 12 capital ships. Zephic closed his eyes, feeling the weight of 40,000 civilian lives pressing down on his shoulders. The Althari had never been warriors. They were miners, engineers, artists, beings who had chosen this remote system precisely because it was far from the galactic conflicts that plagued the core worlds. Now, that isolation would be their doom. The Kresh were notorious throughout the galaxy for their brutal efficiency. They conquered worlds not for resources or territory, but for the simple pleasure of domination. Entire civilizations had been reduced to ash under their advance, and the Althari knew they would be no different. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Kresh flagship, announced Communications Officer Nara, her voice tight with fear. Put it through. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the grotesque visage of a Kresh war leader. The creature's exoskeleton gleamed dully in the harsh light of its command bridge, while its compound eyes reflected the glow of weapon displays. When it spoke, its voice carried the mechanical rasp of a translator unit. Althari vermin, you have 10 minutes to surrender your world. Comply, and we will grant you a swift death. Resist, and we will make your suffering legendary throughout the galaxy. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the defense station in stunned silence. Zephic looked around at his crew, 12 Althari manning a station designed for monitoring asteroid movements, not warfare. Their 3 patrol ships were already fleeing the system, carrying as many evacuees as possible. It was the right call, but it left the colony defenseless. Commander, Vex called out, his voice strange. I'm detecting a new contact. Single ship approaching from the outer system. Zephic's heart sank. Kresh reinforcements? No, sir. The signature is different. Unknown configuration. It's moving fast, very fast. The tactical display updated, showing a lone vessel racing toward the battle zone. As it approached, the sensors began resolving more details. The ship was sleek, angular, with an aggressive design that spoke of predatory intent. But it was just one ship against 300. Commander, we're being hailed by the unknown vessel, Nara reported. Put them through. The screen filled with the image of a human, the first Zephic had ever seen outside of diplomatic recordings. The being appeared remarkably calm for someone approaching certain death. Its hair was graying at the temples, and its eyes held the steady confidence of someone who had seen countless battles. This is Captain Marcus Chun of the U.S. Tenacity. We receive your distress signal and are moving to assist. Zephic's translator struggled with the human's measured tone. Captain Chun, with respect, you are facing a force of 300 ships. One vessel cannot. Commander, I need you to move your station to minimum safe distance and prepare to coordinate civilian evacuation. We'll handle the crash. The human's casual dismissal of the overwhelming odds left Zephic speechless. Either this Captain Chin was completely insane, or humanity possessed capabilities that the galaxy had never witnessed. Captain, surely you understand the mathematics of the situation. 300 ships against one is not a battle. It's suicide. Chen's expression didn't change. Commander, in about 12 minutes, you're going to see something that will change your understanding of human military doctrine. I recommend you start recording now. Your government will want to study this engagement very carefully. The transmission ended, leaving Zephic staring at the tactical display in bewilderment. The human ship, the Tenacity, was now clearly visible on sensors, and its specifications were unlike anything in the Galactic database. It was large for a single vessel, roughly equivalent to a Kresh heavy cruiser, but its energy signature was off the charts. Commander, Vex whispered, the human ship is powering up weapon systems. The energy readings, they're impossible. What do you mean impossible? Sir, that single ship is generating more power than our entire orbital platform. The weapon signatures suggest... I don't know what they suggest. Nothing in our database matches these configurations. Zephyr watched as the Tenacity changed course, positioning itself directly between the Kresh Armada and Zirian Prime. The human ship looked absurdly small against the approaching fleet, like a single warrior standing against an army. "Get me a direct line to the planet's surface," Zephyr ordered. "Tell them to begin emergency evacuation procedures. And contact the Galactic Council. They need to know what's happening here." As the final minutes ticked away, Zephyr found himself fixated on the lone human vessel. Captain Chun had spoken with such certainty, such confidence. Either humanity had developed weapons technology far beyond anything known to the galaxy, or they were about to witness the most spectacular military suicide in recorded history. The Kresh Armada began its final approach, weapon systems charging with malevolent energy. Against this tide of destruction, the Tenacity held its position, waiting with the patience of a predator about to strike. The first indication that something was wrong came from the Kresh flagship itself. War Leader Thax was reviewing the final attack formations when his weapons officer reported an anomaly. "War Leader, the human vessel is emitting energy signatures that do not match any known technology. Our combat computers cannot classify its weapon systems." Thax's mandibles clicked in irritation. "It is one ship against 300. Classification is irrelevant. Begin the attack." But as the Kresh fleet opened fire, something unprecedented happened. The Tenacity didn't attempt to dodge or flee. Instead, it activated what appeared to be a defensive screen that rendered the incoming fire completely ineffective. Hundreds of plasma bolts and energy beams struck the barrier and simply disappeared. "What is that defensive system?" Thax demanded. "Unknown, War Leader. Our sensors cannot penetrate it. It appears to be some form of energy absorption technology." Meanwhile, aboard the Altari station, Commander Zephyr watched in stunned silence as the human ship weathered the initial assault without taking any apparent damage. The Tenacity hung in space, surrounded by a shimmering field that seemed to drink in the Kresh firepower. "Commander, I'm detecting massive energy buildup aboard the human vessel," Vex reported. "Whatever they're doing, it's drawing power from somewhere else." "Somewhere else?" "Sir, the power readings suggest they're tapping into some kind of external energy source. The levels they're beyond anything I've ever recorded." Captain Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. "Commander Zephyr, you might want to shield your sensors for the next few minutes. Things are about to get very bright." The Tenacity began to change. Sections of its hull slid apart, revealing weapon systems that defied conventional understanding. What had appeared to be a single warship was actually a platform for technologies that seemed to violate the known laws of physics. The first weapon of fire was something the Altari sensors couldn't properly classify. It appeared as a beam of pure void, not darkness, but the complete absence of light and matter. When it struck the lead Kresh dreadnought, the massive ship didn't explode or break apart. It simply ceased to exist, leaving behind empty space where 1,200 tons of warship had been moments before. "By the ancestors," Zephyr whispered, "what did we just witness?" The Kresh formation wavered as their lead ship vanished. War Leader Thax's roar of rage echoed across the communication frequencies as he ordered his remaining ships to concentrate all fire on the human vessel. The response was immediate and devastating. Nearly 300 ships focusing their combined firepower on a single target. The Tenacity absorbed it all. "War Leader, our weapons are having no effect. The human ship appears to be converting our energy attacks into power for its own systems." Thax's compound eyes fixed on the tactical display. "Then we will destroy it with kinetic weapons. Launch all torpedo salvos." Thousands of physical projectiles streaked toward the human ship. But instead of impact, they encountered something that shouldn't have been possible. A gravitational field that curved space itself around the Tenacity. The torpedoes bent around the ship like water flowing around stone, many of them looping back to strike the Kresh vessels that had fired them. Captain Chen's voice came through the communication system again, now addressing the Kresh directly. "This is your final warning. Withdraw from the system immediately or face the consequences." War leader Thax's response was to order his ships into a kamikaze formation. If weapons couldn't touch the human ship, perhaps raw mass could overwhelm whatever technology was protecting it. The Tenacity activated its second weapon system. What emerged from a human ship wasn't a beam or projectile, but something that seemed to rewrite the fundamental nature of space around it. Reality itself became malleable, and the charging Kresh ships found themselves trapped in a bubble of accelerated time. From the outside, they appeared frozen in space, but Zephic's sensors indicated that within the affected area, the ships were aging decades in seconds. "Commander," Vex gasped, "the human ship is manipulating space-time itself. How is this possible?" "I don't know," Zephic replied, his voice barely audible. "I don't think anyone knows." The temporal field collapsed, and where 80 Kresh ships had been charging forward, there are now only drifting hulks. Centuries of decay compressed into moments. The remaining Kresh fleet hesitated, their formation breaking apart as individual captains began to question the wisdom of engaging such an impossible opponent. But the Tenacity wasn't finished. The ship's hull began to reconfigure again, revealing weapon systems that hurt to look at directly. The sensors couldn't properly register what they were seeing. Geometries that folded in on themselves, energy patterns that seemed to exist in dimensions beyond normal space. "Commander Zephic," Captain Chen's voice carried a note of weary professionalism. "You may want to begin damage assessment preparations for the Kresh fleet. This engagement is almost concluded." The human ship fired its third weapon system, and the laws of physics seemed to scream in protest. The remaining Kresh vessels simply stopped, not destroyed, not disabled, but frozen in a state of quantum uncertainty. They existed and didn't exist simultaneously, trapped in a paradox that the universe itself couldn't resolve. War leader Thax found himself alone on a ship that was and wasn't there, facing a human who had just demonstrated the power to rewrite reality itself. When Captain Chen appeared on a command screen, the Kresh war leader's courage finally failed him. What are you?" Chen's expression remained calm, almost apologetic. "We're explorers, war leader. We didn't choose this path, but the galaxy has made certain realities clear. Sometimes peace requires overwhelming force." The quantum field around the Kresh fleet flickered and stabilized, leaving the enemy ships frozen, in a state of temporal suspension. War leader Thax found himself trapped in a nightmare of his own making, conscious and aware, but unable to move or act as his fleet existed in multiple states simultaneously. Commander Zephic stared at the tactical display, trying to comprehend what he had witnessed. The Tenacity had single-handedly neutralized a fleet of 300 ships without suffering any apparent damage. The human vessel now hung in space like a predator surveying its territory, its impossible weapon systems slowly retracting into the hull. "Commander," Vex called out, his voice shaking, "I'm detecting additional contact at the edge of the system. Multiple ships approaching fast." Zephic's heart skipped. "More Kresh reinforcements?" "No, sir. These signatures. They're similar to the Tenacity. Human ships." The tactical display updated to show 5 more vessels approaching from different vectors. Each one was unique in design, but all carried the same impossible energy signatures that had marked the Tenacity. As they drew closer, Zephic could see that they were larger than the first human ship, their hulls bristling with weapon systems that defied classification. Captain Chen's voice crackled through the communication system. "Commander Zephic, please prepare to receive additional human vessels. My fleet admiral wants to assess the situation personally." "Fleet admiral?" Zephic repeated weakly. "The Tenacity is a patrol vessel, Commander. We were conducting a routine sweep of the outer territories when we intercepted your distress signal." The words hit Zephic like a physical blow. A patrol vessel, the ship that had just demonstrated the power to rewrite reality itself, was considered routine patrol duty by human standards. What did that make their primary warships? The largest of the approaching vessels, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed anything in the Kresh fleet, took position near the Tenacity. Its hull was a work of art and terror combined, smooth curves that suggested organic growth, but with an underlying geometry that hurt to contemplate. When it spoke, the voice carried the authority of absolute power. "This is Admiral Sarah Voss of the UES Prometheus." Captain Chun, Please report. Admiral, we have successfully neutralized the Kresh threat. 300 enemy vessels are currently held in quantum suspension. No human casualties, no collateral damage to the Alt-Hari colony. Excellent work, Captain. What's the status of the local defenders? Commander Zephyk found his voice. Admiral Voss, this is Commander Zephyk of the Alt-Hari Defense Force. We are unharmed, but we need to understand what we've witnessed here. The technology you've displayed. It's beyond anything in our galactic database. Admiral Voss's image appeared on the communication screen. She was older than Captain Chun, with silver hair and eyes that held the weight of command. When she spoke, her voice carried both kindness and an undertone of steel. Commander, I understand your confusion. What you've witnessed today represents humanity's standard military response to aggressive actions against our allies. The Alt-Hari are under human protection, whether you knew it or not. Under human protection? Zephyk's translator struggled with the concept. But we've never signed any treaties with humanity. We've barely had any contact with your species. Commander, 3 years ago, the Galactic Council voted to establish humanity as protectorate species, a minor power with limited territorial claims. What the Council didn't understand is that humans don't think in terms of territorial boundaries. We think in terms of responsibility. The Admiral's words carried implications that made Zephyk's mind reel. Are you saying that humanity considers itself responsible for the defense of non-human species? Not all species, Commander, but those who have never committed acts of aggression against civilian populations, who have never engaged in slavery or genocide, who have never threatened the innocent. Yes, we consider them under our protection. One of the other human ships, a sleek vessel that seemed to phase in and out of visible space, moved closer to the suspended Kresh fleet. Its captain's voice joined the conversation, carrying a clinical detachment that was somehow more terrifying than anger. Admiral, I'm reading quantum degradation in the enemy fleet. The suspension field is stable, but we have approximately 6 hours before permanent timeline collapse. Thank you, Captain Morrison. War Leader Thax, are you receiving this transmission? The Kresh leader's voice came through the communication system, distorted by the quantum effects but audible. I hear you, human. War Leader, you have a choice. You can order your fleet to withdraw from the system and never return, or you can face the consequences of your actions against innocent civilians. The temporal suspension field can be made permanent, leaving your ships as a monument to the futility of attacking those under human protection. You would not, the Kresh Empire would. The Kresh Empire is welcome to test our resolve. Admiral Voss interrupted. But I should mention that what you've seen today represents approximately 3% of humanity's defensive capabilities. The Tenacity and her sister ships are patrol vessels, not warships. Commander Zephyk felt the universe shift around him. If these impossible vessels were merely patrol ships, what did humanity consider actual military hardware? Admiral, he said carefully, forgive the question, but what exactly are your primary warships capable of? Admiral Voss was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that suggested she was revealing something she would prefer to keep secret. Commander, humanity's primary fleet is designed to fight enemies that exist on multiple dimensional planes simultaneously. We developed these capabilities because we discovered that the universe contains threats that make the Kresh Empire look like children playing with toys. What kind of threats? The kind that can consume entire star systems. Commander, the kind that exist outside normal space-time and feed on the life force of inhabited worlds. The kind that the Galactic Council has never encountered because we've been quietly dealing with them for the past 50 years. The communication fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just been developing advanced weapons technology. They had been fighting a war that the rest of the galaxy didn't even know existed. Admiral, War Leader Thax's voice carried a note of desperate calculation. If what you say is true, why have you not conquered the galaxy? With such power, you could rule every species. Because, War Leader, conquest was never our goal. We learned long ago that true strength comes from protecting others, not dominating them. The galaxy is vast and full of wonders that will be diminished by the existence of empire. The quantum suspension field around the Kresh fleet began to fluctuate as Admiral Voss awaited war leader Thax's decision. Commander Zephyk watched from the Altari station, his mind struggling to process the revelation that humanity had been fighting an invisible war against cosmic threats for half a century. "Admiral," he said carefully, "these enemies you mentioned, the ones that exist outside normal space-time, are they the reason humanity developed such advanced technology?" Admiral Voss nodded gravely. 53 years ago, Commander, we encountered our first void spawn. It materialized in the outer system of a human colony world and began feeding on the life force of the planet itself. Conventional weapons were useless. The entity existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and our attacks passed through like shadows. Captain Chen's voice joined the conversation from the tenacity. The colony world was home to 18 million humans and approximately 4 million refugees from other species. We lost them all in 6 hours. The experience, Admiral Voss continued, taught us that the universe contained threats that required unprecedented responses. We began developing technologies that could affect multiple dimensional planes, weapons that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. And you've been using these weapons to protect the galaxy without anyone knowing? Zephyk asked. Not just protecting, Commander. Hunting. The void spawn aren't random occurrences. They're scouts for something larger. Something that views inhabited galaxies as feeding grounds. The implications hit Zephyk like a physical blow. While the various galactic civilizations had been focused on their territorial disputes and trade negotiations, humanity had been quietly standing guard against cosmic horrors that could devour entire star systems. How many of these void spawn have you encountered? 47 confirmed kills over the past 5 decades. Captain Morrison reported from his phase-shifted vessel. The last one was destroyed 6 months ago near the Antares system. The locals never knew it was there. War leader Thax's voice crackled through the quantum static. You expect me to believe that humanity fights demons from beyond reality? This is fantasy designed to justify your impossible power. Admiral Voss's expression hardened. Captain Morrison, please show our Kresh friend the tactical recordings from the Antares engagement. The communication system linked to the human ship's database, displaying holographic footage that made Zephyk's stomach turn. The recording showed a creature that defied description, a writhing mass of darkness that seemed to exist in several dimensions simultaneously. Its very presence warped space-time around it, and the star system itself appeared to be dimming as the entity fed on stellar energy. The human response was swift and coordinated. Multiple ships similar to the ones now present at Zirion Prime had surrounded the entity, deploying weapons that hurt to look at directly. The battle itself was beyond comprehension. Reality-bending attacks that forced the creature back into normal space, followed by weapons that seemed to unravel the entity's existence on a quantum level. The Antares void spawn was relatively small, Admiral Voss explained as the recording played. It would have consumed the entire system's life force within 72 hours. The local civilization, the Zentari, never knew they were in danger. War leader Thax's communication channel fell silent as the recording concluded. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different tone, less arrogance, more uncertainty. If what you show me is true, then the Kresh Empire has been insignificant. Our conquests, our military might, it means nothing against such enemies. War leader, your empire has been exactly what the galaxy needed, Admiral Voss replied. A manageable threat that kept the various species focused on conventional military development. If the Galactic Council had known about the void spawn, they would have panicked. Panic leads to poor decisions, and poor decisions in the face of cosmic horror lead to extinction. Commander Zephyk found himself grappling with a fundamental shift in his understanding of galactic politics. Admiral, are you saying that humanity has been deliberately allowing conventional conflicts to continue? Not allowing, Commander. Managing. The galaxy needs a certain level of tension to drive technological development and maintain military readiness. The Kresh Empire has served that function admirably, even if they didn't know it. But that's manipulation on a galactic scale. Yes, it is, Admiral Voss acknowledged, and it's also the reason that 47 star systems still have living populations instead of being empty husks floating in space. The tactical display updated to show new contacts approaching from the outer system. These weren't human ships. The energy signatures were completely different, and they were moving at speeds that defied known physics. "Admiral," Captain Morrison reported, "we have incoming hostiles. Configuration unknown, but they're moving through folded space. ETA 30 seconds. Void spawn." Admiral Voss asked. "Negative. Something else. Something familiar." The new arrivals materialized in normal space with a flash of exotic energy. They were ships, but their design was unlike anything in the Galactic database. The hulls seemed to be grown rather than built, with organic curves that suggested biological rather than mechanical engineering. Most disturbing of all, they radiated an aura of malevolent intelligence. "This is Hierarch Malachar, the consuming fleet," came a voice that bypassed the communication system and spoke directly into the minds of everyone present. "We have come to reclaim what was taken from us." Admiral Voss's expression showed no surprise, only grim resignation. "I was wondering when you would show up. It's been, 3 years since the Kepler incident. 3 years, 4 months, and 16 days since you murdered our herald and scattered our harvesting fleet. The debt has come due, Admiral." Commander Zephyk felt terror beyond anything he had experienced during the Kresh attack. These new arrivals radiated wrongness on a fundamental level. They were predators that viewed all life as prey. "Commander," Admiral Voss said quietly, "you're about to see why humanity developed the technologies we've shown you today. The consuming fleet isn't from our galaxy. They're interdimensional parasites that feed on the life force of entire civilizations. And they're infinitely more dangerous than the void spawn," Captain Chen added. "The spawn are essentially wild animals. The consuming fleet is intelligent, organized, and they hold grudges." The alien ships began to change, their hulls flowing like liquid metal, as they revealed weapon systems that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When they fired, reality itself screamed in protest. "All ships, combat formation Delta," Admiral Voss ordered. "This is not a patrol action. Full military response authorized." The human ships responded instantly, their hulls reconfiguring to reveal weapon systems that made their earlier displays seem like mere demonstrations. The tenacity in her sister ships had been holding back, significantly. "War Leader Thax," Admiral Voss called out, "consider this your introduction to the war humanity has been fighting. Welcome to the real conflict." The battle that erupted around Zirion Prime transcended anything in recorded galactic history. The consuming fleet ships flowed through space like predatory organisms, their weapons carving wounds in reality itself. But the human response was equally impossible. The tenacity in her sister ships had transformed into something that challenged the fundamental nature of existence. Commander Zephyk watched from the Altari station as the tenacity engaged the lead consuming fleet vessel. The human ship's hull had reconfigured into geometries that hurt to perceive directly, while weapon systems emerged that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. When the two vessels clashed, the space around them began to fracture. "Commander," Vex called out, his voice tight with terror, "our sensors are detecting reality distortions. The fabric of space-time is becoming unstable." "Admiral Voss," Zephyr transmitted, "should we evacuate the system?" "Negative, Commander. The distortions are localized to the combat zone. However, I recommend you shield your sensors. What you're about to witness will be difficult to comprehend." The UES Prometheus, Admiral Voss's flagship, had transformed into something that defied description. Its hull now appeared to be constructed from crystallized space itself, while its weapon systems reached into dimensions that normal matter couldn't access. When it fired, the attack didn't travel through space. It simply arrived at its target, bypassing distance entirely. "Hierarch Malachar," Admiral Voss's voice carried across multiple dimensional planes. "You're making the same mistake your predecessors made. You assume that because we're younger than your species, we must be weaker. The consuming fleet's response was to deploy weapons that attacked the very concept of existence. Their target wasn't the human ship's matter or energy. They were attempting to unmake the vessels from reality itself. But the human ships had prepared for this type of attack. All ships, activate temporal anchors," Admiral Voss ordered. lock our existence into the current timeline. The human vessels became more real somehow, their presence in normal space so absolute that the consuming fleet's reality-warping weapons simply couldn't affect them. Meanwhile, the humans' counterattack was devastating. Weapons that didn't destroy their targets but instead edited them out of existence entirely. How is this possible? Hierarch Malakar's mental voice carried notes of disbelief. We are the consuming fleet. We have devoured civilizations that span galaxies. We have fed on the life force of entire dimensional planes. And yet, Captain Morris replied from his phase-shifted vessel, "You've never encountered a species that developed their technology specifically to counter your abilities. Humanity has been preparing for this confrontation for over 50 years. The battle raged across multiple dimensional planes, with attacks that existed in past, present, and future simultaneously. The consuming fleet's organic ships began to show signs of damage, not physical harm, but fundamental weakening of their connection to the life force they fed upon. War leader Thax, still trapped in quantum suspension, watched the engagement with growing horror. "What are they?" he whispered. "The consuming fleet," Admiral Voss explained while simultaneously directing the battle, "are what remains of the first civilization to achieve true galactic dominance. They consumed their own galaxy's life force so completely that they were forced to move to other dimensional planes to survive. They're parasites," Captain Chen added, his ship weaving through attacks that existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously. "They feed on the life force of inhabited worlds, growing stronger with each civilization they devour. And they've been working their way toward our galaxy for approximately 2 million years," Admiral Voss continued. "The Void Spawn were their advanced scouts, sent to identify viable feeding grounds." Commander Zephyk felt the universe shift around him as the true scope of the conflict became clear. "Admiral, how many other species know about this threat?" "None, Commander. The knowledge would have caused galaxy-wide panic, which would have made organized resistance impossible. It was easier to let the various civilizations focus on their local conflicts while we prepare for the real war." The tide of battle began to turn as the human ship's weapons found their mark. The consuming fleet's vessels, despite their impossible technologies, were being systematically dismantled by attacks that targeted their fundamental existence. One by one, the parasitic ships began to fade from normal space. "This is impossible," Hierarch Malakar's mental voice carried pure rage. "We are eternal. We are inevitable. We have consumed the life force of 47 galaxies," Admiral Voss finished. "We know. We've been studying the empty zones you left behind for decades. That's how we learned to create weapons that could affect beings like you." The final consuming fleet vessel began to collapse in on itself as its connection to the life force it had stolen was severed. Hierarch Malakar's mental scream echoed across multiple dimensions as his ship was erased from existence. "Admiral," Captain Morrison reported, "all hostile contacts eliminated. The dimensional barriers are stabilizing. Excellent work, everyone. Resume patrol formations." The human ships began to reconfigure themselves, their impossible weapon systems retracting into hulls that once again appeared merely advanced rather than reality-defying. The Tenacity and her sister ships took up defensive positions around Zirian Prime, their presence a guarantee that no further threats would be permitted. "War Leader Thax," Admiral Voss called out, "I believe you now understand why humanity didn't conquer the galaxy. We've been rather busy with more important matters." The Kresh leader's response was barely audible. "Release us. The Kresh Empire will never again threaten worlds under human protection." "I'm afraid it's not that simple, War Leader. The knowledge of what you've witnessed today cannot be allowed to spread. The galaxy isn't ready for the truth about the threats we face." "Then what do you propose?" "The Kresh Empire will undergo a fundamental transformation. You will become our allies in the defense of inhabited worlds. In exchange, we will provide you with technologies that will allow you to face the smaller threats while we handle the cosmic ones." Commander Zephyk found his voice. "Admiral, what about the Altari? What about the rest of the galaxy?" "The galaxy will continue as it has. Commander, the various species will pursue their territorial disputes, their trade negotiations, their cultural exchanges. The only difference will be that they'll do so under protection of forces they cannot comprehend. And if other species discover the truth, then they'll be invited to join the real war commander. But until then, the illusion of normalcy must be maintained. The galaxy's sanity depends on it. As the human ships prepare to depart, Admiral Voss made one final transmission. Commander Zephyk, the Althari will be provided with upgraded defensive systems and a permanent human liaison. Welcome to the Protected Worlds list. The Tenacity and her sister ships departed as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving behind only the quantum-suspended Kresh fleet and the memory of a battle that had redefined the nature of reality itself. Commander Zephyk stared at the empty space where the human ships had been, knowing that the galaxy would never look the same to him again. In the silence that followed, he finally understood the true meaning of the human captain's words. The Tenacity hadn't even been part of humanity's vanguard. It had been a simple patrol vessel, doing routine work in the outer territories. The real war, he realized, was being fought by forces that the galaxy couldn't even imagine.